It's 1:24 in the morning, March 18th, 1990. Boston is asleep. St. Patrick's Day has ended. The bars are emptying out. A bazaar rings outside entrance of a museum. Two men stand outside, police uniforms, badges. They say there's been a disturbance. They need to come in. The young guard inside has one job, one rule: never open the door for anyone. He opens the door. 81 minutes later, those two men walk back out carrying $500 million of the most precious art on earth. A Vermeer, two Rembrandts, cut straight off their frames with a knife. They were never cut. The art was never found, and almost everyone the FBI ever suspected is now dead. But tonight, in that same zone, the frames still hang on the wall, empty, waiting for paintings that may never come home. Boston, March 17th, 1990. St. Patrick's Day. The whole city is out, green everywhere, bars packed shoulder to shoulder. The streets loud with music and laughter, and the kind of celebration that doesn't end until the sun comes up. In a city in Irish as Boston, this isn't just a holiday, it's the holiday. Police are stretched thin. Half of the force is managing crowds downtown. The other half is dealing with noise complaints, the fights, the drunk drivers. It's the busiest, loudest, most chaotic night of the year. It's the perfect night, not for celebration, for something else. Because when an entire city is drunk and distracted and loud, no one notices two quiet men in a parked car, engine off, watching a building, waiting for the clock to tick past midnight. The building they're watching is not a bank. It's not a jewelry store. It's a museum, one of the strangest, most beautiful museums in the world. A four-story Venetian palace dropped into the middle of Boston, filled with priceless paintings, sculptures, and treasures, arranged exactly the way one woman wanted them, almost 100 years before this night. The men in the car know the building, they know the layout, and they know something almost no one else does. They know how easy it's going to be. Because tonight, this museum home to $500 million of irreplaceable art is being protected by two young men, a few old motion sensors, and a single locked door. And in a few hours, it will become the sense of the largest art thief in human history. To understand what was stolen, you first have to understand the woman it was stolen from. Her name was Isabella Stewart Gardner. She was born in New York in 1840, into money, and she married into more of it. But Isabella was never the kind of woman her era wanted her to be. In a time when a wealthy woman were expected to stay quiet, stay home, and stay decorative, Isabella did the opposite. She traveled the world. Egypt, Europe, Asia. She smoked in public. She drank in public. She reportedly wore a pair of lions on lashes outside in Boston. The newspaper loved her and hated her. The high society of Boston whispered about her constantly, and she didn't care because Isabella Gardner had found her obsession: art. Not as a decoration, not as an investment, as a love. She fell deeply, genuinely, in love with beautiful things, and she had the money and the eyes to chase the very best of them across the world. She bought a Vermeer, she bought a multiple Rembrandts, she bought a Botticelli, Raphael, Titian, Degas, Manet, with the help of an art expert named Bernard Berenson. She assembled one of the greatest private art collections on the planet. Masterpieces that today would be the crown of jewels of any museum in the world. But Isabella didn't want her collection sitting in a cold, ordinary gallery. She wanted it to live. So she built a palace modeled on the grand homes of Vinci, with a stunning glass covered courtyard at its heart, filled year-round with flowers and green, even in the brutal Boston winter. And inside, she arranged every single piece herself, every painting, every chair, every sculpture, every tapestry, placed by her own hand exactly where she wanted it. The arrangement wasn't random, it was personal. It was about art. The placement itself was her masterpiece. She opened it to the public in 1903, and she made one thing absolutely clear. This was hers, and it would stay exactly as she made it forever. When Isabella Stewart Gardner died in 1924, she left behind a will. and in that will was a single unbreakable command. Nothing in the museum was ever to be moved. Nothing was ever to be changed. Not a painting, not a chair, not a single object. If the trustees ever rearranged her collection, even slightly, the entire museum was to be shut down, the art sold off, and the money given away. She had built a perfect moment in time, and she wanted it frozen forever. It was a beautiful, romantic idea. It was also decades later the reason the museum became a target. Because here's what never changed anything really meant. By 1990, it meant the security was as old as the philosophy behind it. The museum was chronically short of money. Maintaining a vintage palace of full priceless art is staggeringly expensive, and the gardener had been struggling financially for years. There was little left over for serious security upgrades. The result? The alarm system was outdated. The surveillance recorded a single, primitive setup. There were no modern, motion-activated alarm connected directly to police. The most valuable painting hung on walls, some without so much as glass case in front of them. And the night shift was staffed by young part-time guard students and musicians working a quiet job for little extra money, not trained security professional, not armed, not prepared. In the criminal underworld of Boston, in a city one of the deepest organized crime histories in America, this was common knowledge. The Gardner Museum had a reputation among thieves, a sitting duck, a building stuffed with $500 million of treasure, guarded by almost nothing. It was only a matter of time before someone walked in and took it. On the night of March 18, 1990, someone did. Inside the museum, two security guards are on duty of the overtime shift. One of them is 23 years old, a part-time musician working the night watch. The other is 25. Neither of them is trained security officer. They are young men watching a quiet building on a holiday night, counting down the hours until morning. At 1:24 a.m., the buzzer at the side entrance goes off. The younger guard check the monitor. Two men standing outside in the cold. Police uniforms, caps pulled low, badges. One of them has mustache that the guard will later realize looked slightly off, almost fake. They say they are police officers. They say they are responding to a report of disturbance on the property. They need to come in and check the building. No. There is exactly one rule at the Gardner Museum, the single most important instruction the night guards are given. It is drilled into them. Do not open the door for anyone. No expectation, no exceptions, not for a delivery, not for a stranger, not even for the police. If something seems wrong, you call it in. You don't open the door. The guard looks at the uniform. He looks at the badges and he presses the button. The door unlocks, and in that instant, the most valuable private art collection in the world loses its only real defense. The two officers step inside, calm and hurried, professional. They glance around the entryway, and then one of them looks at the guard a little too closely and says something strange. He says the guard looks familiar. He says he thinks there may be a warrant out for his arrest. He asks the guard to step away from the desk and come over so they can sort it out. And the guard does it. He steps away from the desk. He doesn't realize what he just done because the security desk is the only place in the entire building with a panic button, a silent alarm wire directly to the police station. It's the one thing that could end this in seconds. The moment he steps away from it, the trap closes. This is a robbery. One of the men says he tells the guard not to give them any problems, and they won't hurt them. They call the second guard down from his rounds. They handcuff both young men, and they march them down into the dark basement of the museum. There, they tape the guards' hands and feet. They wrap duct tape around their heads, and they handcuff them to pipes, far apart from each other, deep ground where no one will hear them. And as they finish, one of the thieves says something the guard will remember for the rest of his life. He tells him, "Don't worry, you will hear from us in about a year. In an hour you will be free." It wasn't a threat, it was a timetable. Those men weren't panicking, they weren't improvising. They knew exactly how much time they had, and exactly what they had come to take. With the guards buried and bound in the basement, the two men go to work. And here is one of the strangest details of the entire case. The museum motion detectors were sterile. They couldn't call the police, but they recorded movement. Every step the thieves took through the galleries that night was logged by the system. Investigators would later be able to reconstruct their path through the building, almost minute by minute. And what that data shows is two men who knew exactly where they were going. They climbed the stairs to the second floor. They walked into a room called the Dutch Room, the jewel of entire collection. The room Isabella Gardner filled with some of her greatest treasures. And then they do something that still makes art historians wince. They walk to Rembrandts, The Storm on the Sea of Galilee, painted in 1633. It is the only seascape Rembrandt's ever painted in his entire life. There is exactly one, and it is hanging on this wall. They don't gently lift it down. They smash the protective glass. They pull the painting from the wall, and then they take a knife and they cut the canvas straight out of its frame, slicing through the edge of priceless, irreplaceable, nearly 400 years old masterpiece like they were cutting open a box. Next to it hangs another Rembrandt, a lady and gentleman in black. Same treatment, glass smashed, canvas cut from the frame. Then they take what may be single most valuable object in the room, maybe in the entire building, Vermeer's The Concrete. You have to understand what this painting is. Johannes Vermeer was one of the greatest painters who ever lived, and he was not prolific. In his entire career, he produced only around 36 paintings that survive today, 63 in a whole world. They are among the rarest and most precious objects on the planet. The Concrete is widely considered the most valuable and covered stone painting in existence. Its value is almost impossible to put a number on. They take it off the wall and they carry it away. They take a painting by Govert Fling, Landscape with Obelisk, once believed to be Rembrandt itself. They pull down an ancient Chinese vessel, a bronze gu used for wine in rituals more than 3,000 years ago. Then they move down the hall to another gallery, the Shores Gallery, and here they take 5 works on paper by Degas, delicate sketches and drawings. And here something almost darkly comic happens. They try to steal Napoli flag mounted in a frame on the wall. They want it badly, but the frame is bottled shut and they can't pry it open. They struggle with it and eventually they give up. But they don't leave empty-handed from that wall. Instead, they unscrew the small bronze eagle, a final that sits on top of the flagpole, a relatively minor decorative piece. They take that and abandon the flag itself. In yet another room, the Blue Room, they take a single small painting by Edward Manet called Chistor Tony, and here is the mystery that has bluffed the art world for 35 years. Those men walk past a fortune to take what they took. On the third floor of the museum hangs Titian, The Rape of Europe, considered by many experts to be the most valuable painting in the entire building, one of the greatest works of the Italian Renaissance. The thieves never even went up to the third floor. They left it. They took 5 minor Degas sketches, but ignored masterpieces worth more than everything they stole combined. They smashed and slashed and grabbed an oddly mixed bag, some priceless, some relatively minor, while walking right past the crown jewels. Why? And no one has ever answered it. Were they amateurs who simply didn't know what they were looking at? Were they professionals working from a specific shopping list handed to them by a buyer who wanted those exact pieces and nothing else? Were they interrupted? Were they panicking? Did they simply run out of time on their own self-imposed schedule? 13 objects worth in total more than $500 million. The most expensive art thief in history of the world. They make 2 separate trips out to their car, loading the art. On their way out, they stop to grab videocassettes from the museum's security camera system, taking the only visual record of themselves, and at 2:45 in the morning, those men get into their vehicle and drive off into the Boston night. They are never identified, they are never caught, and the art is never seen again. The 2 guards stay where the thieves left them, taped, handcuffed to pipes in the basement, in the dark, hour after hour, unable to move, unable to free themselves, unable to call for help. It isn't until 8:15 the next morning, nearly 6 hours after the thieves left, that the day shift arrives and the alarm is finally raised. The security supervisor comes in, finds the front desk empty, and begins searching the building. He follows the silence down into the basement, and there he finds them, two young men, bound, exhausted, terrified, but alive. The police are called, then the FBI, and when investigators walk through the galleries, what they found doesn't look like a robbery. It looks like a wound, empty frames still hanging on the walls, what with rage, slashed edges where the canvas has been cut away, shattered glass across the floor. The Dutch room was the heart of the collection, gutted. The museum stood almost exactly as always had. Isabella's chair, Isabella's tapestry, Isabella arrangements, all untouched, except for the holes. The absence, the space where the masterpieces used to be. And almost immediately, the FBI launches one of the largest art crime investigators in its history. And almost immediately, they hit a wall. There are no usable fingerprints. The thieves were careful. The security tape, gone, taken with them. The motion data tells investigators where the thief walked, but know who they were. And the only two witnesses, the guards, had spent nearly the entire robbery taped up in a pitch-black basement. They could offer only the vaguest descriptions. Two white men, police uniforms, average height, one with a mustache that maybe have been fake. Calm voices. That was it. That was everything they had to go on to recover $500 million of art that had simply vanished. In the beginning, the investigators' attention turned to the most obvious question of all. It was an inside job, wasn't it? How else could two men get in so easily, move so confidently, and know exactly what they were doing? And suspicion fell heavily on the young guard who had opened the door. For years, investigators looked at him closely. He was the one who broke protocol. He was the one who let them in. He was the one who stepped away from the panic button. On the motion detector data, there was even a strange detail, a record of the guard's movements through a gallery earlier that night, including the blue room where the Manet was taken, that some investigators found hard to explain. The guard always maintained his innocence. He said he was tricked, like everyone may have been, by two men in convincing police uniforms on a chaotic holiday night. He cooperated, he took polygraphs, and over the decades, no evidence was ever found tying him to the crime. No charges were ever brought against him. Many investigators eventually concluded he was simply a young man who made a terrible mistake, opening a door he should have kept locked. But the suspicion followed him for the rest of his life. Imagine that weight, being the man who led the largest art heist in history and never been able to fully prove to everyone that you didn't mean to. He carried that shadow until his death. And while investigators chased the inside job theory, the real trial, the one the FBI would eventually come to believe in, it's somewhere else entirely. It led into the Boston underworld.